Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bet the Edge. Thanks, everyone watching on our NBC Sports YouTube channel. Coming up, the Jets trade for Davante Adams, and we talk about the Bills and Titans, Eagles, Giants, and Broncos-Saints. Drew, I haven't talked to you in quite some time, so I just have to ask you, man, did you avoid any of those bad beats in the the Monday night football game, excuse me, any of the kicker props or the Jets team total?
I avoided the Jets team total. I had some Jets to win, which did not cash, but ended up my heaviest stake was the second half under 21.5, which was a rocking chair winner because the scoring stopped. It was a weird, wild game, though. It felt like the refs were making some questionable calls and then doing their darndest to make sure nobody could accuse them of being biased by making questionable calls the other way. Just a weird game all around. And, I think having Aaron Rodgers is obviously making this Jet season more entertaining, but the fact that they're now kind of doing this, dumping the coach, bringing in Davante Adams, like all of the sideshow is just making them very fun to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, there's a lot of execution issues that I see with the Jets, right? Like it's not always about the players and personnel, but they moved on from Saleh. They relieved Hackett from his offensive coordinating duties. And now, per Ian Rappaport, the Raiders are sending Davante Adams to reunite with Aaron Rodgers to the Jets for a conditional third-round pick, which can become a second-rounder. What's interesting about that, Drew, is they need to make it to the Super Bowl or he needs to be all pro, like first team all pro. I think it's first or second. There's a little leeway in there, but so pretty much it's a third round pick. Jets right now are plus 3,500 to win the Super Bowl. Does that move the needle for you at all?
Only a hair, and it's because this is an immediate upgrade over what Mike Williams was giving them. The fact that both of their two chances to win the last 2 weeks ended with interceptions on passes targeting Mike Williams is noteworthy. And honestly, you bring in a guy like Davante Adams, and when you add a wide receiver one of that caliber and you move everyone down a peg, like Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson had something building. Like they have a connection. And now if you have Garrett Wilson going up against CB2, CB3 instead of CB1, that can continue to grow and flourish. And Davante Adams is a fantastic red zone target, obviously, and that's kind of been one of the areas where Rodgers has been struggling. So yeah, you want to tick up the Jets offense a bit, but this move, sure. Does this solve all the problems, and will those conditions be satisfied to give a higher pick? No chance. And in today's NFL, if you can be defended with light boxes, which is to say, if you are unable to get your run block and your running game going to the point where the defense going against you has to put additional players in the box, if you're unable to satisfy that, then that unlocks all of the possibilities in the world for the defense to defend you with unique and disguised coverages. It allows teams to turn up the blitz. And honestly, that was kind of the key thing we've seen these last 2 weeks is when the Vikings did it, when the Bills did it, they turned up the blitz on Rodgers. He was under pressure. He's holding onto the ball a hair too long, and he's getting sacked or it's creating negative plays. And, that offensive line, which they invested a lot of time and resources, brought in a whole new class of free agents last year and their top draft pick. It hasn't solved the problem. This is still a team that does not win 1v1 in run blocking. Your running backs, even when they have breakout performances like they did on Monday night, they're still, getting hit behind the line of scrimmage regularly. And that's just a hard way to make a living in today's NFL. So until we see kind of the entirety of the offense take a step forward and really just kind of have complementary football where the running game is able to take a little bit of pressure off the passing game, then I'm not sold at all that this is going to move the needle. And, the bigger takeaway and the quieter takeaway from last night's game is that in the first half, the Jets defense really had no answers. They could not get off the field. The tackling was poor. It was reminiscent of what the Niners did to them week one. And to the degree that you are kind of concerned in the back of your head about these guys being a little washed, considering they had to carry the Jets on their back for the entire Zach Wilson era, it's starting to feel like that might not be that crazy. And if you get out physical the Jets, then, the fact that they have all universe coverage doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I couldn't see myself jumping on any of these futures here, especially with the state of the Jets defense. Offensive line, like you said, improved slightly, but still not good enough to be competitive long term. Maybe be interested in a playoff tickets. It's kind of funny to think about the Raiders here, right? Like this is the Raiders finally kind of throwing in the towel there. I wonder if they're going to part ways with Max Crosby. That's kind of like that last piece of, hey, we're giving up. We're doing a complete rebuild. We're going to stockpile picks and go after players later when we're a little bit more successful. Maybe when we go get a new quarterback or Aiden O'Connell takes another step.
Yeah, no, I'm torn on this because like the Raiders, I think they thought they were going to get a quarterback in last year's draft. Yep. 6 go before them. Really, the pick, the Penix to Atlanta, I think, really was the monkey wrench that, kind of caught them by surprise because they thought, oh, at least we'll get Bo Nix. Well, Bo Nix was taking the pick before them. So, I think that kind of put the Raiders on their heels where they weren't able to really hit the reset button and start the rebuild in earnest with a young quarterback. And now they're paying the price. And if you're a Raiders fan, I think you kind of want them to lose. I don't think they're going to trade Max Crosby. I think Max Crosby is kind of seen as one of the, kind of pillars of the rebuild once that gets started in earnest. But surely the Raiders now are, they're incentivized to lose and maybe get some splash fun plays for Crosby along the way.
Absolutely. Well, let's move over and talk about Titans at Bills. Bills are an 8.5-point favorite here. Total set at 42.5. It's funny to see this because I kind of agree. 71% of the money is on Buffalo at the -8.5, 87% on the over, and then no surprise here, 97% on Buffalo money line. Any initial thoughts for this game?
This one's tough for me to kind of say with high confidence what to do here because my numbers say bet Titans, but if Will Levis is the starting quarterback, then I have zero appetite to bet Tennessee here. Let's pretend there is a world where the Titans decide, you know what, we're going to make a change. We're going to put Mason Rudolph out there. We're going to try to do what we did against the Dolphins and play ball control, run the ball with Tony Pollard, who's doing fine right now out of the backfield. Have short, keep the down and distance manageable. Have Rudolph manage the game so that we can play a little bit of keep away from the Bills here. Considering the state of the Bills defense, that might work. I don't know if they'll get the win, but it'll keep this game competitive to the tune of covering an 8.5-point spread, which is huge. Now, if Will Levis is out there though, and he is trying to go Superman mode, and he's doing what we saw him do now time and again in this year 2024, where the inaccuracy will come up out of nowhere. The decision making is hugely questionable, and the chaos plays tend to be negative against the Titans. Then 8.5 is very coverable for the Bills. I think the Titans defense is not match up well necessarily against what the Bills want to do. The Bills have, they obviously have a top 2 quarterback in Josh Allen, but they have a phenomenal offensive line right now, and they are really, really winning their 1v1s and making things easy for the Bills offense generally. I didn't have Ray Davis breaking out last night on my bingo card, but he fit exactly perfectly with what they want to do, and the offensive line was creating running lanes that you or I could have made a living running behind, I think. And so, yeah, the Bills are going to be able to do that against the Titans, I would expect. The question is entirely, can the Titans keep the Bills' possessions relatively muted by playing keep away? And if Will Levis is out there, then I'm not interested. So ear to the ground, very, very carefully here to see if there is any chance that the Titans pull the old switcheroonie and this is the Mason Rudolph show. Because honestly, these next 2 games for the Titans, you're going to be huge dogs at Bills at Detroit. Period. These are 2 of the best teams in the NFL. You're going to be massive disadvantage on the road these next 2 weeks. That leaves you at 1-6. At which point, what's the plan? What are we trying to do? How are we trying to build this? What are we trying to win this year? I look at certainly the idea of going up against offenses and quarterbacks the way you are this next 2 weeks, and your best chance to squeak out a win is, I think, to have Rudolph out there. So fascinated to see what they do in Tennessee.
Yeah, I was torn on this game. I went back and forth a couple of times. I probably will find my way to teasing the Bills if we don't get too much line movement on this, bringing it down to the 1.5. But I think the Bills cover, right? Since 2021, they're 5-3-2 against the spread as a home favorite. Most of the times, those are of the one touchdown variety. for me, the issue is not just Will Levis. It's the Titans defense is not good enough. Sure, the Bills are ranked 26 in the NFL in run defense, so the Titans could, control the ball effectively, kind of maximize their possessions and minimize the Bills' possessions. But I just don't see that happening. I think the Bills are going to have success. You said something that I want to touch on and kind of highlight about this Bills team that's been kind of phenomenal. I faded, and I'm going to say this, with my chest. I faded this Bills team preseason. I put it in one of our columns where I took their win total under. And for me, it was about, number one, the wide receiver core. Number two, it was what happens if this team sustains injuries to any of those very, very important pieces. And they're more important because of the cast around them not being as strong. Well, we saw they were still able to pick up a win while James Cook was unable to go. Shakir basically paid like 4 snaps, and he's their most valuable wide receiver or pass catching guy on that team, and they still picked up a win. Ray Davis fit in really nicely. He showed shades of what he was doing at Kentucky there, and they probably could have won by more. I know people will say the coin flip was a little different, right? Like the variance going in the way of the Bills more so than the Jets missing those field goals. But it was a level playing field. It's not like they were playing on 2 different fields, right? It's not the Bills' fault that the Jets missed two field goals in 29-mile-per-hour wind gusts. I think the Bills have a really good chance to blow this team out here. This Titans team. It's not now where I'd want to be fading the Bills. I think you have a good opportunity in week 10 when they travel to Indianapolis. That's a total look ahead spot because the next week they play Kansas City. They're going to be like, I'd imagine the look ahead line now is -2, but I imagine it'll probably be closer to 3.5. You're going to catch a lot of people just hammering Bills -3, 3.5. And for some reason, if the Bills win, it's going to be by 1 or they get upset. So I think I'd rather take my chances a little bit later in the season, trying to catch the Bills, maybe sleeping, even though this is a short week. And it's more than a touchdown spread. Did Monday's victory, did that change anything for you? Do you have them possibly earning the number 1 seed in the AFC? That's 8-1 right now.
Not really. I still think because I agree with you that the time to fade the Bills is not against an offense where you have sincere questions about them even moving the ball, right? It's the time to fade the Bills is when they're up against an offense that could put them at a sincere deficit, right? If the Bills are down 2 scores in a game, like we've seen it now, it's kind of over. And to kind of bring it, so I think that will the Bills win the East? Probably. Will the Bills get a top 3 seed? Probably. But I think right now, at least, I have the Chiefs and the Ravens rated pretty clearly ahead of them, and I have the Houston kind of rated somewhat similarly to the Bills. And Houston, of course, has the tiebreak via head-to-head win. So I think right now the Bills are kind of in the 4th seed looking up, and are going to need a little bit of run good to move up in the standings. But to bring this whole conversation, this whole segment full circle, Brad, the most important thing about the Davante Adams trade that is not being talked about is that by securing him as the Jets, you keep him from the Bills, who were the other sincere suitor in that whole trade discussion. So bummer for anyone who had Bills futures that Davante Adams didn't land in Buffalo, because that would have absolutely changed the complexion of that offense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last time I was on Bet the Edge talking NFL, I did recommend a Josh Allen MVP ticket at 4-1, and he's quickly dived down to 2-1 after the following game, and now he's back up closer to 5-7, depending on where you shop your lines here. But it'll be an interesting game. Probably be fading the Bills. Let me get into this promo before we get on to Eagles and Giants. This Sunday night, it's a showdown of 2 teams vying for position in a crowded group of AFC contenders. Catch Aaron Rodgers and the Jets take on TJ Watt and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Eagles at Giants. Eagles 3.5-point favorite, total set at 43. This game is a game where I personally don't know if I want to have action on a side or total. I've been incorrect about the Giants and the Eagles every game this season, and I haven't like seen anything from this Giants team defensively outside of the pass rush where I'm like, yes, this team is just going to go out there and cover a ton of spreads. But defensively, they're getting the job done, and offensively, Brian Daboll's basically decided he is going to run Daniel Jones' legs off. Doesn't matter about the durability of his quarterback coming off an ACL injury, as long as that gives them a chance to win. What are your initial thoughts about this game?
Interesting handicap. I can't get to 3.5. No way, no how. I think this should be on the other side of 3. And currently, there's not a lot I love for this week coming up, but Giants would be at the top of my list just because you are on the right side of a key number right now at 3.5. I like 2 things about the Giants for this spot. They're drawing an Eagles team right now that is a hair dysfunctional, that is going to be dealing with a meaningful injury to their most important offensive lineman in Jordan Mailata. That opens up opportunities for the Giants defensive line, I think, to take advantage of weaknesses across the front of the really win the trench battle against the Eagles, which is huge because again, like, we're not seeing necessarily full cohesion of Jalen Hurts running this offense. The other advantage that I make for the Giants here is that I would be kind of floored if Malik Neighbors does not clear concussion protocol this week and play in this game. Apparently, apparently the injury was more serious than I realized in the first place. But Malik Neighbors ruling in is going to move this off of 3.5. Period. And so I guess from just the standpoint of you're capturing some line value, taking 3.5 now makes sense. And then from the standpoint of can they match up well and get a win, Giants defense is playing very well right now, and they're particularly capable of winning in the trenches in the absence of Mailata, in my opinion. So, I never really expected to have a moment where I was banging on the table for the Giants this year, but here we are.
Yeah, the Giants, I just feel like they're going to be one of those teams. They were kind of like that last season, right? They had a remarkable stretch of covering games. Those were more at home than they were away from home. But it's just something about this Eagles team where it makes me want to stay away. Secondary, we knew was bad, right? I thought they brought in some pieces over the offseason to make them better. Drafted Quinyon as well, who I thought would make them a lot better. It's just hasn't popped up. Maybe they're going to get more healthier now with another game with Devonta Smith back and AJ Brown. But I just can't quite get there. But I do want to ask you, there's a couple tough games on the schedule for the Eagles coming up.
Sure.
Right now, 3 wins, 2 losses on the spin here. Their win total is pretty much sitting at the same number that it was preseason at 10.5, but it's juiced to the under. If you had to make a bet, which would you kind of lean to over or under 10.5 wins?
I would lean under, mostly because the offensive line current performance and injury potential scares me. Mailata is massively important as far as left tackle goes. Hurts doesn't have all the best pocket awareness in general. He only likes to roll in one direction, and Mailata being unavailable could truly kind of put a wrinkle in what they want to try to do, even now that they have a healthy set of wide receivers back. So the other kind of massive thing is Barkley. He was unable to do his part of the bargain in that game against the Browns. And some of that, I think, was related to the performance of the offensive line. So there are kind of specific questions I have about their offense where, right now I rate them 7th. So I have a favorable rating on these guys. But I'm, kind of finger on the trigger to downgrade them at a couple spots here. And then the defense I have currently rated 15th. But the intangibles is where it gets weird for me with this Eagles team. Does Nick Sirianni feel like a guy who has long-term job security in Philadelphia? Not really. Like
No.
coming out of the bye and getting an opponent like the Browns and having a performance that was a little bit uninspiring, and then all of the histrionics around the way he was acting with the crowd and the media after, it's telegraphing, a coach who's in trouble. And, if that ultimately is what causes this team to melt down a bit, we know that they have turned over a lot of veteran leadership in that locker room from last year to this year. And this could get real sour real quick if they don't start putting together some winning football.
Yeah, the Saquon Barkley angle will be interesting. Revenge game for him. Looking like his number is going to probably be around 85.5
Jeez.
once it's finally released here. Hasn't hit that in back-to-back games. Even when he played against some of the games he's hit, it's needed a 59 yard run. That was against the Bucks, where his total was like 78, ended with 84. And then he needed a 65 and a 34. That was against the Saints and the Green Bay Packers. I don't think their run game is good. I don't think they know kind of what they're doing. You talked about Sirianni. I just don't see him making it through the entire season. Coaching mistakes, number one, just kind of like the bravado he brings to this team as well. It feels almost toxic. I hate to say that word, but it feels toxic. Doesn't feel like it's something that is going to make this team better, or at least suited for a legitimate Super Bowl run.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. I think that's fair. And, I also would say that the NFC East is very tough to put a handicap on right now. Like I know that the Giants have dug themselves a hole by only winning 2 games so far, compared to say the 4 for the Commanders and the 3 for the Eagles and the Cowboys. But I could still sort of see these 4 teams finishing in any order. Depending on who can just kind of start to put together winning football. The Eagles' schedule overall remaining is soft enough that if they don't implode, then the other side of the other side of positive is right there for the taking. Like they could have home games in January, and if this team is playing with confidence and and they do rally around their coach, then the Link is a very, very difficult place to go on the road in the playoffs and win. So I can kind of see both extremes for the Eagles being realized. I can also see that the NFC East could be, the picture of chaos until the very bitter end this year.
Yeah, I think we see a ton of chaos. I'm just loving what the Commanders are doing. They're keeping Jaden Daniels upright, and he looks like he's playing better football than Jalen Hurts. He's decisive. There's a lot of times when Jalen Hurts plays football, and obviously this is coming from the Alabama guy, so it's all eyes on Hurts, where he doesn't know what he's wants to do with the football. In the NFL, you have to be quick with your decisions, whether that's taking off and running, whether that's progressing through your progressions first, second, third, and then running or throwing the ball away. He quite hasn't grasped that. And I think obviously some of that had to do with AJ Brown being out, and once again Devonta Smith. But I don't know. I really like this Commanders team. If they could just play a lick of defense, just a lick of defense, they might be live to win it. And that'd be just phenomenal, right? Let Jaden Daniels win the Offensive Rookie of the Year after winning the Heisman, and bringing that team to a little bit more of glory. I know Matthew Berry will be excited about that one. Let me get into another promo read before we touch on our last game. We are counting down to the tip-off of the NBA season. And for those of you drafting your fantasy teams, get a jump on your competition with a free Roto World basketball draft kit. Get all the rankings, stats, and player profiles you need to dominate your league all season long. Go to NBCSports.com/hoopskit to download today.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Well, let's talk about the game I think everyone is looking forward to. And I say it with a little smile on my face. Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints. Broncos, a 1.5 point favorite. Total set at 37.5. And for me, this is a turning point to the season for two relatively young teams, or at least quarterbacks there. Bo Nix starting under center for the Denver Broncos, and probably Spencer Rattler once again. Man, the Saints were given the game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a silver platter. When they played against Mr. Baker Mayfield, there were times when I was wondering if Baker Mayfield was going to get benched. 3 interceptions in that game. However, the Saints only scored 27 points and gave up 51 points. The Saints are so bad where it's unfathomable. Defensively was always a staple for this Saints team. Always you knew you can hang your hat on a team that tackled well. They stopped the run and their pass coverage was good. That's out the window. So now you are going to allow a ton of points, long drives, and play from losing positions. And so far, it hasn't helped the Saints. I don't know how they play against a team like the Broncos, who are going to be less bravado, go out there and take way less chances than the Buccaneers did and try to control the game, control the ball, and pick up a win. I lean Broncos -1 here. Am I kind of wrong in my handicap of that, or you on the Broncos train as well?
Well, I still licking my wounds from betting the Broncos against the Chargers.
I did as well. It's okay.
That was gross. And honestly, like the worst part about that experience was just as soon as there were 10 points on the board for the Chargers, you're like, well, guess the game's over, because two score deficit is too much for Knicks to come back on. And I know he got a lot of garbage time points in that game, but it was out of reach. And really and truly, the fact that the offense for the Broncos is so horizontal and is relatively straightforward to defend, I think is going to be a huge problem for them. The Saints defense is the biggest question mark in terms of how you rate them coming into this game by far. And before getting into it, we should probably cover the most important aspect of this game, Brad, which is the injuries. The best player that wears Broncos orange is Pat Surtain. He is unlikely to be available as he is in the concussion protocol. The best players for the Saints, really the best unit for the Saints, are their wide receivers, and they are unlikely to be available. I would the kind of clouds swirling around Rashid Shaheed's knee injury are not good. I think he would be a very long shot to be on the field on Thursday. And Chris Olave also in the concussion protocol, I think, is a long shot, which means if Spencer Rattler is going to get it done in this game, he's going to have to do it with Bub Means, Cedric Wilson Jr., Mason Tipton, Foster Moreau. I mean, this is a cast of characters that doesn't inspire a ton of confidence of this offensive staff being able to get a plan together in a short week and be successful against the Broncos defense that's played up this year. The pass rush for the Broncos defense is sincerely solid. They're going up against a unit that they're down to only 2 of their starting offensive linemen from the preseason, and Talise Fuaga and Trevor Penning. The entire inside is turned over now. And so I think the Broncos defense will have most to say about the outcome here, is they should have a pretty successful night. And then the Saints defense is a huge question mark, like you kind of laid out off the top. This is a unit full of veterans. This is a unit that had put together a handful of really nice performances to start the season, and then the wheels fell off. And I would trace some of that to, I think that they rely very, very heavily on outstanding play from Demario Davis at the second level. And he got hurt and he's been back in, but he hasn't been performing anywhere close to the level that really kind of makes that whole unit sing overall. They get a bit of a pass for conceding 50 points to the Bucks from me, just because the Bucks had a ton of short fields. So where I'm going in terms of side here, I wouldn't stop anyone from betting the Broncos, just because, again, I think the unit of distinction will be the Broncos keeping the Saints into the 10 to 13 point range. But I think the stronger angle is probably under 37.5. I don't think either of these quarterbacks is realistically capable of coming back from a 2-score lead. And the only way this is getting to 40 points is if this is a more successful score and answer type of, loosey-goosey wide open game. And with a short week with two young quarterbacks who have never had to prepare in their entire careers, neither of these guys have had to prepare to turn around and play on 4 days. And in their entire careers, they have not had to figure out how to adjust with having this many depleted weapons with the turnover in terms of personnel, particularly for the Saints. So I think this spells trouble for both of these offenses, and this game sets up as, first to 14, first to 16 wins. And so as low and as terrible and as impossible as it seems, I'm playing under 37.5 in this Thursday night stinker.
I mean, I can't blame you there, right? This has the feel of one of those games where we're watching Thursday night and it concludes and we're like, wow, how did the NFL not flex this? Why would they schedule this? It just feels gross. Like, outside of those first couple of games for the Saints, they haven't been good. It was perfection. And what was it? 2 straight games where they scored on every drive with their starters in. Like, that's just not sustainable long term. We're going to see a heavy dose of Alvin Kamara. If you want to talk about a guy who you should find a way to captain in DFS, it's going to be Kamara, because he's going to get touches running the ball. He's going to get touches and targets. It's going to be the Alvin Kamara show, because you're not going to, like you said, trust guys like Foster Moreau, even Juwan Johnson as the most reliable pass catchers now that you have Shaheed and probably Olave out in this game. And the Broncos, stone cold nut under team. I think they only twice they've touched the 40s. And that was against the Seahawks and the Raiders. And I mean, that Raiders game, they just kind of obliterated the Raiders, which doesn't happen often. Keep the ball in front, just play solid, slow, controlled football is probably going to be the deal for both of these teams. So I can kind of get down with that. I'm actually eagerly waiting to see some player props in this game, because, a lot of sports bettors and more of like the recreational variety have this tendency to get to primetime action and really just want to hammer home overs. This is going to be one of those games where, pick your spots, but there are going to be some very tasty unders, especially in pass catchers in this game. And you just got to find the right guys. I'm just waiting and biding my time. I want some of these numbers to get driven up, but just remember, primetime numbers are normally overvalued. So normally the guys who you take unders on are the guys you take over on, and the guys who you take overs on are guys you take unders on, because that's what the market really does.
One funny wrinkle for this game, Brad, people are going to bring up, I think, pretty much ad nauseum, that Sean Payton is returning to the Superdome. My fun wrinkle for this game is I'm going to be remembering the last time we saw the Saints and the Broncos played was during the COVID season, when all of the Broncos quarterbacks had COVID. And so they started Kendall Hinton, the wide receiver at quarterback, who promptly went 1 for 9 for 13 yards, 2 ints, got sacked once in a 31-3 loss for the Denver Broncos. That's my Saints Broncos touchstone.
Sounds like we're gonna have a ton of fun, but this was fun. Listen, everyone watching, don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to you who are watching us on our NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. For Drew Dinsick, I'm Brad Thomas. Enjoy the games and good luck with your wagers.